Okay, our speaker today is somebody we know well and knows us, so watch out. Yeah. Anyway, and always gives me new insights into life, and I just really appreciate that because she's dedicated to living hers. Here's Rita.
All right. Oh, yay. Okay, good. And everybody, I hope online can hear this as well. And maybe it's a little high. Okay. I never know how to dress for a microphone. It's getting really difficult. Good morning, and thank you, Brian. So in case you haven't heard yet, the theme for this month is grief and sorrow. So buckle up. Brian gave me the option to talk about anything else, and I said, no, I've been preparing for this for 7 months. Life's been teaching me a lot of things. So I'm going to begin with this poem written by Robert Browning Hamilton. I walked a mile with pleasure, and she chatted all the way, but left me none the wiser for all she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow, and ne'er a word said she. But oh, the things I learned from her when sorrow walked with me. In September of last year, Larry and I were on a bucket list trip to the Canadian Rockies. I had talked about this trip for so long, my friends already thought I had taken it. But I'm very interested in vortexes and spiritual energy places, and we've been very fortunate to visit many of them, like Sedona and Mount Shasta and Ayers Rock in Australia, Haleakala and Kilauea in Hawaii. And one that I've been reading about for years I was very interested in is Lake Louise and Banff in Canada. I don't need to go to far exotic places. Canada is about as far as I ever want to go. I'm a homebody somewhat. So in September, we began in Vancouver, and we didn't drive, we took train and bus and things across Canada, making our way to Lake Louise. And along the way, we stopped at a place that proved to be far more consequential to me than anything else we saw in Canada, and that was Maligne Lake. And in the center of Maligne Lake is a little spot called Spirit Island that will forever be my heart place. And Chris knows that I have a slide with the picture of Spirit Island on it, and he's going to bring it up. And I'm going to ask him to keep this up until I tell him to take it down, because I want you to sink into this image. And for once, those of you on Zoom have the advantage, because it's easier for you to sink into your computer screen than it is for us to sink into this TV at a distance. But wherever you are, however you are viewing this, feel the energy of this place. Even in image form, it's possible to feel it. Spirit Island is a sacred place, a sacred land to the First Nation people of Canada, but in particular to the Stoney Nakoda people, who believe that the mountains that surround Spirit Island are physical representations of their ancestors. This mountainous place surrounding the island is called the Hall of Gods. The fact that Spirit Island is surrounded on 3 sides by the same mountain range is very rare and adds to the significance of this place for the Stoney Nakoda. The land is sacred and is protected by a very small fence with a very small sign that says, "Stop, spiritual and fragile area, no access." And in fact, no one has access to this land, not even the Stoney Nakoda. It is part of Jasper National Park, so the First Nation people must petition the Canadian government to gain access to this land. But they have asked when disastrous events have occurred, and their requests have always been answered. They met here in 2015 when the fires were decimating this area and others in Canada. And they met again in 2021 after the discovery of the bodies of thousands of First Nation children buried at residence schools. They came here to soothe and comfort those who were grieving and to lay their sorrows to rest. This island, with its small grove of trees, pulses with energy. But it is not the energy of agony. It is not the energy of sorrow. It is soothing, comforting, healing. It feels as if the hand of spirit in the form of the wind passes over you and restores you. You can take the slide down now. And so I stood on that day in September across from that place on a little strip of sand, gazing at the island in awe and feeling all of this. And I found myself there alone. You're only allowed 15 minutes in this place. You can walk on an upper walkway and back to the boat. You can only get there by boat. And 15 minutes. So I had like about 30 seconds to myself on this beach. And so I found myself alone, and I just threw my arms up to the sky. And I was so grateful, as if I wanted to take this energy and just, bring it into me and keep it with me always. And in that instant, I felt as if a ball of light came from the sun and just pounded into my chest. And all that effervescent energy just went all over. And whenever I feel bad, I go back to Spirit Island and I can feel it again. It was the most glorious feeling of my life thus far. And so I said, thank you. Thank you to the ancestors in the mountains surrounding this. Thank you to my ancestors that walk with me. Thank you for the spirit of energy in this island and the energy blessing you've just given me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And my internal voice said to me, you are welcome. You're going to need this. And 2 weeks after that blessing, an event occurred in our lives which tilted my world on its axis. And my walk with sorrow began. So it doesn't matter what the event was. We all have events. We all have these tremendous things that happen to us. The longer we live, the more practice we get. Frank Laubach wrote in his book, Letters from a Modern Mystic, somebody was telling me this week that nobody can make a violin speak the last depths of human longing until that soul has been made tender by some great anguish. I do not say that it is the only way to the heart of God, but I must witness that it has opened an inner shrine for me, which I have never entered before. A beautiful quote. While we may not revel in having to take a walk with sorrow, there is value in that walk. And here's what I've learned so far. Amanda, beautiful Amanda Sherlock, wrote a wonderful article in this month's Unity 5-City newsletter. Oh, yay, you're nodding, so you have read it. Good. I'm only going to quote a little bit of it. And in it, she defines grief as the normal and natural reaction to a significant emotional loss of any kind. Any kind. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small. I look in my mirror in the morning, there's a little grief there. It's the conflicting feelings caused by the end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. It's the feeling of reaching out for someone who has always been there or who has never been there, only to find when you need them again, they're no longer there. It's individual, unique. It can't be compared. It can't be categorized. There's no absolutes. And there are no reactions so universal that all people will experience them. So you can understand why when grief and sorrow hit, we feel very much alone, very individualized. No one understands what we're going through. But Amanda goes on to write about how you can resolve grief and also how you can be with others who are going through an event of grief or sorrow. Very, very helpful. So if you have not read it, please do read it. I'm going to put it on my bulletin board because I have a feeling I'm going to need to reread it over and over. So Amanda was among the first wave of help we asked for after our event occurred. The first lesson we quickly learned was that we needed to reach out to others. And Teresa, I have to say how many times I've thought about you, because a few months ago, you said, in your talk, it's like these words came out booming, you cannot do this alone. And I was on Zoom and I felt like you came right in and said, are you listening? You cannot do this alone. But you not only ask for help, but also accept that help. And for us as human onlys, we tend to have a hard time with the acceptance. But Larry and I are so grateful to you, Amanda, for being the guide you are to us as we traverse our grief and sorrow on our walk. And it was comforting to know right from the start that we were not walking alone. You were with us. And there were many, many others as we moved quickly into our second lesson of our walk with sorrow, which was to remember to use our spiritual toolkit. We all know that having a daily spiritual practice keeps us connected and synchronized with the divine. But we do not do this just to check it off on our daily to-do list. We do this because when change or loss or devastation occur, the tools of prayer and meditation become our lifelines. As Reverend Ogun Holder wrote in his article entitled, Grief as a Spiritual Practice, we turn to our tried and true spiritual practices to break free from our Groundhog Day grief loop. We can keep ourselves there over and over. The one where we find ourselves caught in a weird time vortex, experiencing life's progress while stuck, reliving the loss and its associated feelings. The Reverend Paul Hasselbeck in his book, Point of Power, urges us to have an impeccable spiritual practice. And boy, is that word impeccable daunting. To do it over and over and over and over again until, as it was taught to us, until it is, as Webster defines it, impeccable, without defect or error, faultless, flawless, until it becomes an automatic reaction, available in any instant that we need it. And I love the story Rosemary Fillmore Rhea wrote about her grandfather, Charles Fillmore, and his meditation practice. She said, I learned about prayer from my grandfather. He was different from other grandfathers. When he was not involved in conversation or activities, he went into the silence right then and there. It was so much a part of him that I assumed all grandfathers meditated. And so when my friends came to visit one Saturday, and they noticed my grandfather sitting there with his eyes closed, but not sleeping. They knew he wasn't sleeping. When we went outside, they asked me why my grandfather just sat with his eyes closed. And I replied, he's in the silence, of course. Doesn't your grandfather sit in the silence? They assured me that their grandfathers did not sit in the silence, and they wondered what it was, and I explained that it was praying. Charles Fillmore would drop into the silence whenever he was not in conversation with someone. And this story was an inspiration to me to do the same, to close my eyes at any moment and reinforce that divine connection. Whether in a doctor's office, waiting in line at the grocery store, or any other type of service, I learned to never do it while I was behind the wheel of my car. There's something about, being stopped at a stoplight and doing this that really irritates people. But this mini meditation has become a part of our lives, to drop into that. It was an immediate return to those feelings I had on Spirit Island. Soothing, healing, the reassuring whisper, you are not walking alone. And with prayer and meditation, we have our affirmations, of course. And I live with one of the greatest affirmationators on the planet in the form of my son, Alec. While I was trying to explain to Alec, how bad this might be, Alec would look at me and go, it's fine, Mom. Everything's fine. We're all fine. And we're going to be fine. And I kept trying harder to explain to him how bad this is. And he kept doing that. And finally I went, listen to the kid. So now we just go, you're right. All is well. For this moment, all's good. So thank you, Alec. And that's my son too. No problem. My pleasure. Our spiritual toolkit goes beyond what each of us can do individually. It includes many others. And using our first lesson, ask for and accept help, we asked others to walk with us. Silent Unity, Unity 5 Cities Prayer Chaplains, Power of 8 groups here and in Colorado, Energy Healers here and in Canada, friends and their church communities across the country. I was tallying it up this morning and I thought, it's not hundreds, it's not thousands, it's tens of thousands of people. And in fact, Larry just a couple weeks ago was involved in a group where they not only had thousands of people online with healing intentions focused towards those who needed it, but also thousands there in the ballroom with them. So tens of thousands of people and gathering and sending that energy and that prayer. So our walk with sorrow became a communal walk. And this led to the greatest lesson of all of this walk with sorrow, that the appreciation that we walk always in divine friendship. Jim Rosemurgy, Rosemurgy, in his book entitled The Quest, writes about divine friendship. And he says, the challenges and trauma of life cause us to forget that we are spiritual beings, created for a spiritual purpose. We are orphaned by life's difficulties. We wonder if there's a purpose for our being. This is the winter of our life, but spring is near. The fact that we wonder why we are here is the first sign of the coming of a new season. If life is treating us harshly and seems without rhyme or reason, it is because we do not know our purpose. We do not yet know that within every crisis is a call to purpose. We are being asked to remember who we are and why we are here. Most of us spend our time trying to alleviate our anxiety and anguish, and this is understandable, but ridding ourselves of pain is not our purpose. Our challenge is not the issue, nor is our work to find a way to overcome it. The challenge is a call to return to center, where the presence waits in silent repose. Still, we may persist in our way. Some of us become angry with God, and we wonder, why won't this mighty Spirit act on our behalf? Because God's not our servant. God is our beloved, and we are beloved of God. A divine friendship awaits us. The fruit of knowing God is discovering ourselves and what Spirit can do in, through, and as us. A divine friendship requires that we give daily attention to our presence. A consciousness of the one becomes a part of us. And then when the traumas of life come, we have a pool or reservoir of spiritual awareness and understanding out of which we can act and live. Our salvation is that. Our spiritual identity is untouched by our anxiety and difficulties. This divine friendship requires that we remember we are God's beloved. Nothing happens to us but for us. We have a purpose, which, as Rosemary writes, it's the same purpose for all of us. That was such a shock when I read that in the book. I've searched for an individual purpose all my life, and it's the same for all of us. And that is to know and experience the one power and presence. And we have a mission, which again, he says, is all the same for all of us. Love one another and care for those in need, including yourself. In remembering this, we need not walk alone in sorrow, but hand in hand in divine friendship with beloved Spirit who works with, in, and through us. And so, in addition to the wonderful daily word we had to begin today, I'm going to read and close with the daily word from January 19th, 1928. And it's included in this beautiful pamphlet, which is downloadable from unity.org, called Grief is a Spiritual Practice. And some of the wording is a bit dated, so I did a little changing here and there, a little refreshing, but it says this. This is my watchword for today. I cannot be alone. The comforting presence of God is ever with me. The presence of God inspires and comforts me at all times. There can be no situation in which the one presence is not at hand. All I need to do is simply to recognize that his presence and to make myself at one with it. The comforting presence of God relieves me of all sorrow, all sense of loneliness, and all grief over personal limitations. With God at hand, there can be no sorrow or adverse thought about me. My mind and my soul are filled with the peaceful assurances of the Spirit, and I am delighted and satisfied. I am never alone when in the consciousness that the divine attends me and walks beside me, just as a friend would walk with me and go my way. This one presence lifts me up. I rest in its arms. I am sustained and soothed by the knowledge that in truth, I am eternally unified in oneness. My spirit is buoyed up by the Spirit of God. So when I feel myself walking a bit too long with sorrow and entrenched in my Groundhog Day of reliving all the stuff that brought sorrow, I remember I'm walking hand in hand with divine friendship, with beloved Spirit who works with, in, and through us. And I go to Spirit Island, to that feeling, to that message, because it is my reminder that I'm not walking alone, that I have whoever I need, whatever I need, whenever I need it. Sorrow may have clasped one hand, but divine friendship has the other. And it is with great gratitude I say that the greatest gift of this walk has been that I am never walking this alone.